Okay, and we're back, and it's a great pleasure, as always, to spend time with friends. And Jordan Maxwell has been a friend of mine and a friend of yours for, well, a long time. He's been investigating what really runs this planet, the symbolism, the mechanism, and all the rest of it for over 50 years. He's a remarkable human being in service to the good side of what's left of this allegedly sentient species. And he's back with us tonight. Hello, my friend. How are you?
Hi there, Jeff. It's really quite a story how our civilization has slipped down to the lowest notch, and we seem to be on a downhill slide.
Oh, yeah. Sliding to the bottom of the septic tank is where it's going.
Exactly. Precisely. And most people, don't care because as long as it doesn't affect them right now, who cares? Well, eventually it's going to affect everybody on the earth. Nobody's going to be left out.
Well, just like the radiation from Fukushima, it's going to affect everybody on the planet.
Everybody. Yeah. Absolutely. Everybody on the planet. And so we've talked about this before about how I believe that the human race has been brought into question now. I think the whole human experiment on the earth, because I know we've had ultimate terrible times in ancient history, and awesome things have happened, I'm sure, but today is different because whatever's going to happen today, the earth is filled with people, and the chaos would be absolutely horrible if things break down now because people are not prepared for it. In the early thousands of years ago, people were more farmers, and whatever would happen, if they lived through it, well, they could rebuild their...
Hey, 150 years ago in this country, 95% of Americans were agrarian.
Yeah. And so therefore, no matter what the situation, if they live through it, well, they just get their farm going back again and get their life going back. But today, no, with high-rises and computers and all the technical stuff that we depend on just every day, if anything happens, I mean, I don't want to be around when that happens because people today are angry at each other to start with.
Well, the lies and the manipulation, the social engineering are so over the top, and you know it, and many of you listening understand it very well. There are so many people now that are laughing at Obama, who's going to run for a second term, and say, no way, his ratings are so low, no way he's going to win. Well, folks, you haven't caught on to the game yet. And here's the game. The game is, yes, his ratings are in the trash. Who's he going to run against? Someone who can beat him? Probably. However, there's a spoiler now. Remember the name Ross Perot? What did Perot do? He split the vote twice to allow the Clintons to walk in, basically. Okay? Yeah. He won the presidency for Clinton twice. That's arguable. Donald Trump is not a serious candidate. You know why? Because if he were, he would run for the Republican nomination for president. He announced today, and this was a pretty easy call, that he is formally and officially running on the Independence Party, the Reform Party ticket in New York and other states as well. That means he's going to split the Republican vote of outrage against Obama and potentially allow this gangster to win a second term. That's how the game is going to play. Trump is a diversion, and the fact that he's running as an independent tells me all I need to know.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. There's no doubt in my mind. You're exactly right, because it's not going to work. Besides, in this country, like Dick Gregory used to say, we love to talk about the fact that we can elect our leaders, but you cannot select your leaders.
Right.
And so, as far as I'm concerned, I just sit by and watch this whole mess.
Can you believe, Jordan, the pace? And this is also by no accident. The pace. At which all of this is hurtling toward people who would at least, in better times, make a cursory effort to do something. Now they're just blown away.
I know. And, the things I was talking about some 45 years ago, or talking about conspiracy in government and Bible codes and the Illuminati and secret societies and all that kind of thing. I was fascinated with the intrigue of how the world works, never believing for a minute that I would ever see this country completely destroyed, totally, completely destroyed, so that the great American people are totally helpless, can't do anything, they don't know anything, nobody reads, nobody cares to do anything. And now it's so far gone, it's just amazing. So I'm just wondering and watching the world go by now. At 70 years old, I sound like a 70-year-old because I've seen so much of this coming many years ago, and now it's finally here. And the thing I guess that disturbs me the most is the fact that I have so much more that I would love to tell people, that I've collected this kind of knowledge for 50 years. I've got stuff that nobody's heard. I would just love to be able to do something with this knowledge before I leave here, because there's so much to be told about how the system really works. How the commercial works, the banks, the insurance companies, government, how the entire world system operates, how it's always operated. And I'm just amazed at how much people don't know. And unfortunately, the kind of thing I talk about has a niche audience. Generally speaking, people in the country, they don't care, they don't give a damn about any of this stuff. I've joked about it and said it has nothing. What I talk about has nothing to do with basketball. But in point of fact, that's pretty much true. The kind of thing I talk about, most people are not going to spend 50 minutes, and I've spent 50 years looking at it. And most people haven't spent 50 minutes sitting and wondering about how this government actually works. And I can tell you one thing: nothing works the way you think it does. Nothing. That's a whole story in itself. Yeah,
that's an amazing quote. Nothing works the way you think it does, Jordan Maxwell. And that really is as profound as it gets, and it's 120% truth.
Yeah. When you think you walk into a bank and you're going to borrow money from a bank, you don't borrow money from a bank. Banks don't loan money, period. They've never loaned money. As a matter of fact, in the California Constitution, the 1849 Constitution expressly says in English that no banks are allowed to operate inside California state, period. And that there will be no California state tax ever. And in California state, there will never be a state tax ever. That's in the Constitution.
Right.
Well, today we got, we have something called a state tax. It's not really. It's a federal tax on federal citizenship, and that's a whole other story in itself. So the point I'm making is that nothing is what you think it is. But we talked a little bit ago about this particular time of year being the spring and Easter, and I thought it would be interesting for some people who have never heard where our celebrations come from. Yeah,
please. Oh, yeah.
Because the Jewish celebration of the Passover is very, very big in the Jewish community, and almost all Jews, no matter what their political perspective, look to the Passover is very important.
0.2% of the world population, Jordan.
Yeah.
And here we are talking about the religious importance of 0.2% of the world population. That's not to demean them in any way, but we have population groups and ethnic groups that are a little bit bigger than 0.2% of the world population.
Yeah, I know, but it's dominant in the Christian countries too, even throughout the West.
Yep.
So
go ahead, please.
Well, in order to understand Easter or Passover, because they're both the same thing, they both are a celebration of the spring, of the coming of new life in the spring. So it boils down to sun worship. One of the ancient pagan worships of the world is sun worship. Let me explain. In the first week of summer, the first day of the first week of summer, the sun is as high over the northern hemisphere as it's going to go.
Okay.
It's not going any further.
We'll go right through the break, Jordan. Don't stop, please. Go ahead.
Okay.
Now say that again. The first
week of summer, the sun is as high in the northern hemisphere as it's going to go.
Okay.
Not going any further north than the first day of summer.
When is the first day of summer? Do we know?
Well, it's what we call the summer solstice.
Solstice, yeah.
Yeah, and so the first week of summer. Now, the sun is directly overhead. Now, I should throw in at this point and say that all of the teachings in Christianity, the entire theology of Christianity, was developed in the northern hemisphere. Christianity has no teachings in it coming from the southern hemisphere. We don't have anything of the Aborigines of Australia or the tribes in Brazil or the Mayans and the Aztecs, etc. All the teachings in Christianity come from the northern hemisphere. That's important because once you understand that, you begin to look at the idea that the sun, as I said, is as high in the northern hemisphere as it's going to go on the first day of summer.
June 21st.
Yeah, which is, we say that, and the sign, the zodiological sign that dominates the summer is Leo the lion. And so the sun is then referred to as being in the house of Leo, the lion. And so Leo is the lion of the tribe of Judah. In Hebrew, it's the lion of the tribe of Judah, is the sun in the constellation of Leo. Now, when he's in summer, he's very hot. We say this guy's really hot. But now, 90 degrees later, because the sun moves 1 degree each day southward. So 90 days later, or 3 months later, it has moved 90 degrees southward. Now, he used to be hot in summer. Now he's not so hot. Now he's falling, so we call it fall. And now the sun is halfway down. It's going down, and so we call it fall. And now 90 degrees later, or 90 days later, again 3 months later, the sun reaches this lowest point in the southern sky. It is now down in South America, and our winter is here. And so the ancient people said that the sun was of little value to them now because the sun is dead as far as we're concerned. And if you think about how ancient man must have lived, tens of thousands of years ago, it would be freezing cold up here, and there's not much sunlight. And so to them, the sun's dead. It's of no value. It's gone. However, when it reaches the lowest point in the southern sky, which is on December 22nd, it goes no further south than December 22nd. It stops. And for 3 days, the sun rises on the same degree. Even the United States Navy instruments can tell you that the sun comes up on the 22nd on the lowest degree, and then on the 23rd and 24th comes up on that same identical degree. So for 3 days, the sun does not move off that 1 degree, off the lowest degree. So we say that the sun is not moving for 3 days. So it's dead. So God's sun is dead. And of course, the sun does belong to God. It doesn't belong to you. It belongs to God. So it's God's sun. God's sun is the light of the world. Of course, the sun is the light of the world. And so the sun reaches its lowest point, December 22nd, stays there for 3 days, dead for 3 days, then begins on the December 25th, the sun moves 1 degree northward. And as I said, the Navy can see that on their instruments, that the sun actually moved 1 degree northward, which means now it's going to begin its annual journey back to the northern hemisphere. Thank God God's son is reborn. He's born again, and he promised he would return. So here it is. He's returning. He's now beginning his annual journey, coming back to the northern hemisphere. So 90 degrees or 90 days later, he is finally, what was dead in winter, he is now springing back to life for us. So we call we call that time when he's springing back to life spring. And so when the sun passes over the equator, officially over the equator, the ancient people said, and we need to throw this in, that the ancient people said that when you died, they used the word passed. We still say that, like grandmother passed last night, or grandfather passed away last night, or passed on. It's always past, meaning they're gone. And so when the sun was dead in winter, reborn on December 25th, that's why we celebrate God's son's birthday on December 25th, because it moved 1 degree. Now it's coming back over the equator. And as it comes over the equator, they celebrated in Egypt and around the world the coming of the sun back to the northern hemisphere. Why? Because it's spring. He has passed over the equator. So on the first week of spring, they called it the Passover, because the sun has passed over the what am I trying to say? The sun has passed over the equator. So this is where we get the idea of the Passover. So basically what we're saying is that the Jewish religion is honoring the sun now, who's coming back. He's going to be springing back to life.
Mm-hmm.
And, of course, spring is associated with the constellation of Virgo.
Mm-hmm.
So, therefore, God's son is born of a virgin. Of course, Virgo the virgin, the constellation of Virgo. And so, eventually, 90 days later, he's back as the Lion of the tribe of Judah. And so once you understand that the story in the New Testament, especially in the New Testament, is an astronomical story about the sun and its travels through life and death, and he's come back and bringing life back to the northern hemisphere. And of course, the ancient people said that the sun was pure energy, and energy is life. Without energy, there is no life. Life is energy, and the sun is pure energy. So therefore, if the sun were not to shine, but kept his energy for himself, he would last probably forever. But the sun is very generous, so it's going to spread its energy around the solar system to warm the planet, and especially to us. And so the sun is giving rays to the earth so that food can grow, and we can have life. And so therefore he is giving his life that you might live. So God's Son has given his life so that you might live. Of course, the Son's giving his energy so you can live. And so when you start breaking down the ancient story of astrotheology, you begin to see that both Judaism and Christianity are actually astronomical religions. And when we get into Judaism, of course, I was going to say also that the Passover, as I said, was the sun passing over the equator. But we can't have Christians worshiping the sun in the Passover because that's Jewish. So the Christians say instead that God's Son is resurrected. That sounds better. So he's resurrected and come back to life. And so,
much more dramatic, I agree.
Well, it sounds better. It's just a whole lot better than just Passover. And so the Christians go out in the first week of spring and to celebrate God's Son passing over the equator. And so what do? They have a Easter sunrise service where the Christians go out and actually wait for the sun to rise. And somehow or another, they are able to completely misunderstand what they're doing, standing out there 5 o'clock in the morning, watching the sun come up. That's sun worship. And so they're watching the sun come over the equator, or passing over. Then when you get into the Jewish religion, understanding that, we've heard so many times that the early Jewish religion or the Hebrew religion, the ancient Hebrew religion, first of all, I am of the opinion, now I've only been looking at this for 50 years, but I'm of the opinion that there is, in fact, never was a ancient Hebrew religion. I do not believe at all that there was an ancient Israel. I believe that Judaism was most likely developed in the AD. I do not believe Judaism was a BC religion. I think Judaism probably was developed somewhere around the 8th, 9th 10th and 11th century A.D. and has been the entire story has been given to us by Christendom, and the reason why they gave us the Knights Templars and the lodges of the Knights Templars within the church and the other secret societies and fraternal orders operating within the Roman Vatican were seeking to give a legitimate foundation on which the Vatican could then begin to dominate the world for God. But, you can't just come out of the woods one day and put your hand on a rock and say that God sent me to rule the world. Nobody's going to buy it. So the Knights Templars realized they've got to develop some kind of an ancient history in which nobody can discuss, nobody can argue with, and it gives, gives legitimacy to the Christian church to dominate the world. And the way they do that is to come up with a religion which is supposedly an ancient, back in the BC, before our common era, the Hebrew religion, which in point of fact never existed. And so we hear the story, and all of this is in reference books. I mean, go to the Jewish reference
Right. Well, it's hold on, Jordan, we have to pause. But it's very easy to hear what you're saying as being the genesis of the story.
Yeah.
And religions are just stories, basically. There are parables and morals in there, to be sure.
Of course.
But the mechanical story itself is taken, as you say, from astrotheology. When it comes to silver and gold investment. And that's the name of that game. Hold on, we'll be right back with Jordan Maxwell. Okay, back with Jordan, and learning a lot as we always do. All right, my friend, carry on. This is fascinating.
Well, the Bible starts off in Genesis 1, the first chapter, and talks about how the day and the night was divided by God, but not the way the Babylonians did it. The Babylonians started their day at 12 midnight like we do. We're taking the Babylonian method of starting the day from 12 midnight till to 12 midnight the next night is the day. But in the Hebrew system, we're told that it was from the evening, from 6 o'clock in the evening to 6 o'clock the next evening. So it was from the evening to the evening was the way the Hebrews, the ancient Hebrews supposedly kept time for their day, evening to evening. The reason for that is because Moses was the leader of not a solar cult, but Moses was the leader of a moon worship cult. And so once you understand the words and terms and symbols that are used in the Old Testament, you'll see that they are lunar symbols. And the reason why is because in Egypt and across Egypt was the Sinai, and in the middle of the Sinai Desert are high mountain ranges. And from Egyptian side of the Sinai mountain ranges, at night the moon would come up in the east. When the moon comes up, it comes up from the mountains. And so the ancient peoples believed the moon lived in the mountains. He became known as the old man of the mountains, the moon god who lived in the mountains. I've talked about this before, but I think it's important to realize that this moon worship was the belief that the moon lived in the mountain. At night it came up about 6 o'clock. And so the moon god came into his own about 6 o'clock in the evening. And he would not show himself while the sun was out. And so the sun religion, or the worship of the sun, primarily became known as Christianity, while under Moses, the worship was of the moon, the lunar god. And so the moon god in Arabia, his name was Sin, spelled S-I-N. And Ai was a mountain. You put the mountain Ai together with the moon god who lived in the mountain, Sin, it becomes Sinai. So Mount Sinai is actually the mountain of the god Sin, S-I-N, who's the moon god. And from that point, you begin to see why they count the days from evening to the evening, because that's when the moon comes out, is from the evening to the evening. So from the moon god worship of Moses, then you come to the time when that the ancient Hebrews were supposedly worshiping the sun in the age of Taurus the bull. That was a long time ago, back when India was dominating the earth with its religion thousands of years ago. And so the whole world, we say, was actually in the age of Taurus the bull. This is why when Moses comes down from the mountain to inaugurate a new age, the next constellation following Taurus is Aries, the ram. So Moses comes down and sees the ancient Hebrews worshiping the golden calf. The golden is the sun. The sun is golden, and the calf is, of course, Taurus the bull. So for 2,160 years, the ancient peoples have been worshiping God, the sun god, in the age of Taurus the bull. Now Moses is going to inaugurate a new religion. The sun is now going into the age of Aries, the ram. Now they're to blow the ram's horn instead of worshiping a golden calf. So the ram's horn is, of course, the horns of the Aries, the ram. Now, 2,100 years later, we find that the next constellation after Aries, going backwards, is Pisces, the two fish. So now we're going to worship God's sun, the light of the world, incidentally, is our risen Savior. Of course, the sun is your risen Savior. If it doesn't come up, the whole world's dead in 3 weeks. So the next constellation after Aries, blowing the ram's horn, we now have the two fish of Pisces. This is why Jesus is referred to as the great fisherman. And in all Christian literature and all Christian pictures everywhere, you will always see Jesus with two fish. That's the two fish of Pisces. 2,160 years later, we're getting ready now to go into the next constellation. The next one is, of course, Aquarius. And Aquarius, incidentally, I do not believe is going to be here for another 425 years yet. I don't think we're near the age of Aquarius. A lot of people do, but I don't. I think the age of Pisces began in 325 A.D., so that would put the age of Aquarius about 425 years from now. But nonetheless, the point being is that Jesus, in the Bible book of Luke 22:10, the apostles, the 12 apostles, which are the 12 brothers of Joseph, the 12 tribes